Hello, this is Franco.cabral broadcasting from the Honest Liar podcast, a conversation around finding the inner liar within all of us and leveraging the truth to create expansion across all areas of your life. Today's topic is coffee date with mom. So I am so excited to be bringing you the very first interview of hopefully many more. But I couldn't have thought of a better person to bring to my first interview than my mom, Maria Trusa.
Hello.
Hello. So I'm excited. This is going to be a great conversation. And you're not just my mom, and obviously, yes, there's a dimension that you will be able to share with the listeners that haven't heard, another side of, my story. You can also speak to the audience of entrepreneurship, of somebody who's looking to better their life across body, being, balance, and business. You're very much into, no shock there, many of the things that I am as well. And you bring both the dynamic of our relationship, mother-son, both entrepreneurs, both happening to be trying to build businesses at the same time. So I'm extremely excited to have you. Thank you for coming on.
Well, my son, it's truly an honor for me to be here and supporting you and sharing with you, because we are about sharing. I know that through the years, I've instilled in you this desire to help and help in different ways. I mean, you're doing it in your business, but this is another way of helping humanity, because that's what we're about. And what's interesting, when we started our coffee date,
we're going to tell you a little bit more about that in just a little bit, what coffee date means.
When we started our coffee date, our conversations every time would get deeper and better and more profound. The connection was building even more. And I've always used to think, my God, this was an amazing 45 minutes. I wish we had a camera. So now we are actually making that reality come true.
Today's coffee date. So we typically have coffee dates on Thursday. So today is a Thursday. It couldn't be a better day to be recording this episode in lieu of our coffee date that we normally have. So just to tell the listeners a little bit more about this, this concept of coffee date. One of the things that I've talked about in some other podcasts, was wanting to have a full life and wanting to be this four-dimensional man, and understanding, first I had to understand how one-dimensional I was and how broken I was. And one of the areas of my life that I've drawn a lot of power from is balance. And balance is, the relationships that are most important to me, yours being one of them. And as a busy entrepreneur and father of two young children and husband, building a business and a busy life, it's difficult to find the time for all the things that we want to do. And our relationship, really we were having a very difficult time because my schedule's busy, your schedule's busy. And I came up with this concept one time because I was very frustrated. I was in a space where I'm trying to connect with my mom. You're busy, so I kind of can understand, but a certain respect I didn't understand, because to me it wasn't okay that we didn't have space and we were scheduling a month out to create space. So this idea of coffee date started. And coffee date, also I've talked about the idea of hitting singles versus home runs. So often, in the past, we had some powerful dates, and we would go, for 2, 3, 4 hours to dinner and talk, and it was a big time, commitment, which became very difficult for us as we continued to, become busier people. So the idea with coffee date is, instead of doing this massive home run kind of a date where it's hours of time, we're consistently creating 30 to 45 minutes a week to do a date. And we're fortunate enough that we live in the same space. And I'm going to ask you, what this process experience has been like for you in just a moment. But I'd have all of the listeners, consider that if you're hearing this and you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm not around my parents, or I'm not around somebody that I want to connect with. It's the intention behind really what it is we're doing. We're created protected space that's on our calendar consistently, that's doable and manageable, and that can be done virtually. You can have
I was just thinking about that.
yeah, so you can have a FaceTime on the calendar with somebody that you love, that you want to connect with for 30 minutes a week, but intentionally go to a place where you're making a cup of coffee for yourself and you're treating it just like you would if you were face to face. So that's just an idea for anybody listening. But I would like you tell me a little bit of the pain, as to why this idea of coffee date came up, because it starts with the pain, and it's something that I talk about often. And then what has the process been like? You mentioned that it's gotten deeper and deeper. If you can just share kind of the dark and the light, of how it started and what's been the gift, with doing it.
Right. So I'm going to start talking about basically our relationship has always been a very strong relationship. But you have felt it, and I have felt it, that there was sort of like a little crack in the foundation that somehow I couldn't figure out how to patch it. Like there was, and we always were striving to spend time with each other, to connect with each other, to love each other, because our love, it was always unconditional in there. Like I've always felt love from you, and I've always given you love. But somehow I knew that there was a disconnect. And we started, when you moved into my house, which for me was a blessing. And I remember you going through your struggles. And for me, there wasn't even one thought of not supporting you and giving you whatever I could give you, and be there for you and your family. And that, you were in a very, very dark place. And it was heartbreaking as a mother to see your son, who you see is so capable. I mean, what I was seeing is an amazing man who is hardworking, who wanted to be the best father, the best husband, the best son, the best brother, the best friend. That is who you are. But I would also see how much in pain you were, and I couldn't understand it. I couldn't figure it out. And as a mother, your knee-jerk reaction is to try to fix it. And I was, trying to figure out how to fix it. Okay, I was able to be there for you when you moved with your family, and I gave you my home, and I wanted to make sure you were comfortable there. But then came the real work. Once you moved, physically, you're obviously not in your 6,000 square feet home, close to that. You were now in my house that is 2,800 square feet, and you were squeezing your family there.
Two dogs,
two
children,
kids, and your wife, your beautiful wife that I am blessed, blessed to have as my daughter. I mean, for me, she is, and I got to see, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, because I got to see the real Eliana, the real wife that you have. I've always respected her, but she got to another level for me. And physically, you were okay, you were settled in an unsettled environment in a way, but then came the real work, which is, my God, I'm seeing my son broken every single day.
So, I talked about, I think it was in episode 5, about a pivotal day that you and I went out to dinner. And, I can sense, that you wanted to help. And I know that it was coming from a place of good intention. Intentions are important, but at the end of the day, results matter, and the results from what I was getting from your intentions wasn't me wanting to share and connect with you and, and to open up. I got that you didn't understand me. That's the place that I was in. And, and you had said just, there's so much to be grateful for, but I was in an extremely dark space. So, and the title of the podcast was Gratitude Ain't Easy. And it, you made it seem like it was this easy thing. And obviously now, I can look back and see all the work that it's taken me to get to a place of gratitude. But also, what I wasn't recognizing was all the work that you did. I don't even think you were recognizing that for you, gratitude is easy, but how many years of gratitude journals, of therapy, of work that you've done on yourself to get to a place where gratitude now has become easy. And I'm in that place. An amazing place to be in, but I wasn't then. And I felt alone. And I felt alone even trying to connect with you because I couldn't really express what I needed from you. And you couldn't connect with what I was feeling, almost because to me, and maybe it's my perception, is you were almost disconnected from how long ago you were in that dark space and all of the work, and it wasn't like you just flipped a switch and said, oh, now I'm grateful for my children and for my house and for I woke up today. And I mean, it pissed me off. When I heard you say it, I'm like it's not that fucking easy. So talk to me a little bit about what was it like for you to hold, try and hold that space and navigate through me being a shit show, not being able to tell you what I needed, and I gotta imagine it brought a lot of pain. And what was that process like for you?
So there was a huge lesson that you taught me, and the beauty of life is that you're always learning if you're open. I knew that my intention was to help. I knew that all I wanted to do is figure out a way that I could be there for you. And when you taught me that night, like you said, it was a turning point for us, and it was definitely a huge lesson for me. Because what I realized after that dinner was that you're right. Because you made me see that I have forgotten how many years and years, I mean, probably 30 years, I have gone on those daily deposits that you talk about. Every day working at getting better, getting gratitude. And I found these journals because, as you know, I'm writing this book, and I realized the 7 years of journaling, and there was my secret. But I thought now it was like since I see it so clear, and I think you can now relate to where I was, because I see it so clear that the formula is gratitude equals happiness. But to get there, it is not easy. And when you help me see that, I realized that day I pissed you off like there was no tomorrow. And you step back and you really disconnected. But what I decided to do was, okay, I am going to give him this space. And I am just going to be here, and I am going to listen. And he's going to come to me when he needs to come to me. I am going to be there for him when he needs me. The many mornings, that you would come and you will break down, you would hug me, and I couldn't go to work. We would go and I would cancel my day because you were so broken. And as a mother, boy, that was hard. That was so hard. I was holding up tears because I wanted to be strong for you. And I remember you, this picture is always going to be with me, where I was holding you and you're 33 years old and you were my baby. And the tears were coming down my back, and I had all these tears from you, and I'm like, oh my God, my baby is so broken. It was hard. But the work that I have done on gratitude kept me strong for you and your wife and your kids. And I decided that it was not about me at all. It was all about you. I was okay. I wanted to make sure that you were okay, that you can rebuild the life. And I saw you, and listen, I mean, even going and spending time with your wife, you will be broken. She was definitely stronger, I have to say, but I'm seeing the pain of in the turmoil in the space that you both were in. Um, but I knew that I could be there for you. And my life will stop if you needed me. That I knew. Nothing mattered more than you. Not my business, not my, nobody else. You were my priority.
Oh, that's a heavy start. Thank you. And, hearing you talk about, those moments, uh, as the whole idea behind this podcast is to share, the whole picture. It's another reminder to myself of how important it is to look back frequently, because, I reflect often, but some of those moments are moments that I've forgotten about, moments that I don't even want to think about, because the brokenness that you describe, I was a complete mess. And it's only been, now, today being I don't know, September 19th. This is about it's 2 years
2 years.
basically. So yeah, so
October.
less than 2 years ago, this space that you're describing, so to now be doing this interview in my new home, is pretty powerful.
You know what it is? Is hope. It is hope. And that's why, I love what you're doing, because you're sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly, like we were saying. You're sharing the pain. And the pain is something that is universal. All of us, everyone that's watching. I don't care who it is. I don't care how wealthy you are. I don't care what nationality you are. I don't care how young or old you are. We all experience pain. But we hide the pain. We hide it. Why? Because we are afraid of being judged
Or not feeling good enough.
or not feeling good enough.
And that's, I think that's an opportunity, to shift a little bit, in that, that's a story that I've talked about, and it's been difficult to overcome, and I continue to, still to this day, attack that story of not feeling good enough. At the end of the day, I was broken, and part of why it was even harder for me to share with you is I wanted to make you proud, my whole life. So here I am sharing, and I have no place to hide. You were seeing all of me, and I was in a place where I couldn't stand seeing myself. So for my mom, who I just want her to see me in a great light, to be seeing all of my dark and my lightness, that was more than I was capable of handling at that time. And I honor your strength, for being able to hold space. And I think this is a really important lesson for me, for our listeners, for yourself. You couldn't have held space for me if you didn't first learn how to hold space for yourself. So a big part of this journey for me, as I've shared before, is about learning how to be the best me I can be, because someday my kids will go through darkness and my kids will experience that. And the lessons that I've learned in the last 2 years from you and Dad have been significantly greater than any other years in my life. And maybe I wasn't ready to learn those lessons yet. But I've learned significantly more from the pain that you've shared, that maybe as a kid, as parents, we want to shield our kids from pain. And, we want to show them the greatness. But part of why I'm documenting this process and sharing this process is because someday I want my kids to know that, number one, Daddy's not perfect. and I will never be. And they don't have to be perfect. And not to say that you ever told me I had to be perfect. And it's always easier to play Monday morning quarterback. But in my eyes, you were perfect because I didn't see any of your brokenness. I just saw this powerful woman who is an entrepreneur, a great mom. She works hard, she works out, and I saw this greatness. So I expected that that's how I'm supposed to be. But it was also a lie. Not that you told me a lie, but it was a lie because I only saw one part of it. So my ask to you is, what could you tell the listeners a little bit more about, your brokenness and because you weren't always as well put together, emotionally, well dressed as you are now, but you've come from a broken past and have done a lot of work. So, if you can tell the listeners a little bit about your past, your story, go whatever direction you want, from mom to business owner, entrepreneur, whatever you feel is relevant for the conversation.
Yeah. I think it's important to recognize where our parents come from. And I'm going to start with my mom. So my mom passed away 2 years ago, an incredible woman. A woman that I did not always see in the same light. I come from the Dominican Republic, and I was a child that my mom left when I was 8 years old. And I was left in a cousin's house. My little brother, that was about 3, 4 years old, went to our grandparents' house, and my other brother went to a cousin's house. And then two of my brothers come to the United States. And 8 years old, the misery, the trauma of my life begins. The hardest years of my life, 8, 9. The years that could have destroyed my path, could have taken me through a path of destruction. And so my mom leaving, that was the beginning of misery. Those are the misery chapters of my life. And 9 years old, there is a lot that happened to me. I will share more, as you know, my documentary. I'm not allowed to share a lot of the story because the documentary will be coming out. The target date is going to be in February.
Just to jump in, so the listeners understand, there is a documentary that's being done on you, currently on the concept of pain and triumph within entrepreneurship.
Yes,
and
it's called The Triumph of an Entrepreneur Spirit.
And you happen to be the Hispanic entrepreneur within this series of, of
7 lives.
7 lives.
Stories. Yes.
So very, very exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. So those 2 years were extremely difficult. Then I come to the United States and I get married to your dad. To jump, because we don't have all the time in the world, they'll be able to read my book and hear the whole story. But I get married at the age of 17. I get pregnant with you at the age of 19. And I had no business being a mother. I was such a broken soul. I was completely broken, not just a little bit. My childhood broke me, and then I married your dad, and we had many differences, and it was a painful, relationship. There's my story and there's his story, so we're not getting into that story.
And then something in the middle.
It's something in the middle. But when you were born, I realized actually how broken I was. You were the first person that made me see the honest liar. I looked at that mirror, and there was one incident that I shared with you that breaks my heart, but I've learned to accept my story because it is my past. I can't bring it back. If I could bring it back, then I would fix it, but I can't. So I embrace it, and I am embracing myself because I definitely understand that I was so broken that I would do something like I mentioned to you, you were a little baby and I'm holding you in your little feet, touch me in my private part. By it was just you moving. In my knee-jerk reaction, I threw you in the bed. That scene is something that is in my mind as the biggest catalyst for change for me. You have been the reason I am who I am today. You started it. And I said to you the other day, the deep love that I had for you, even though I was so broken, that deep love made me start a healing journey. I decided if I allow myself to continue being this broken, I am going to break my child. I am going to continue this this circle of vicious cycle of breaking generations and generations. And I decided because of you that I was going to make sure that somehow it would take whatever it would take. And I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I was going to break them all. My children will be better children. My children will be exposed to everything that I couldn't be exposed to. But it wasn't easy, Franco. And I know that the disconnect in this, am I good enough? We talked about it the other day, after looking at my documentary. And I actually got it. I got why you felt the disconnect. Because the first years of your life, you were disconnected to your mother, the person that is supposed to be there to nurture you, to love you, to when you would cry at night, that it would be the person that would be there, just loving you and nurturing you. And I couldn't do it. I was not equipped. I was a broken soul. But I thank God that the love, the deep love that I have for this little baby that my past wanted to destroy, I didn't allow it.
How old was I?
Well, you were born, it happened when you were born. You were probably 6 months. 6 months.
So think about something. I didn't actually even think about it until literally this moment. 32 years later, I am holding my daughter at 3 o'clock in the morning, asking her a question. Are you proud of Daddy? And the answer was no, as I shared in earlier podcasts. And my healing process began because I had a mirror held up to me from Sienna that said to me, I'm fucked up. And if I don't do something, I'm going to fuck her up too.
Wow. That's powerful.
I hadn't really thought about it until this moment. And the lesson I'm learning is, when you said this the other day, it was literally last week on Coffee Date. And we talked about how, divine that was and, how God's presence was there. You gave me a gift that I don't think you recognized, you did. You gave me closure. It was extremely cathartic, because for a long time I have felt something and I felt guilty, for feeling that disconnect, and wanting, and there was a piece of me that I understand. I understand, all that I know of your past. And I say it all the time, I'm so proud of the mother that I have for what she's been able to overcome in her life and the life that you've provided for, my siblings. But there was a piece of me that it was like I wasn't allowed to feel what I was feeling because I always justified it but my mother is great. And you had to be in a space where you were self-aware enough to recognize that saying that you were broken and maybe you weren't there for me at times, the way I needed you to be. But that doesn't mean that you weren't a great mom. You were an amazing mom. You know, that to me solidified deeper than ever that I don't have to be perfect, because my entire life I've been trying to be perfect. And the woman that I saw as perfect is more amazing because of the imperfection that you allowed me to see in that moment. And as I'm learning this 34 years later, I'm grateful that it's 34 and not 64 or 84. But it also really solidifies why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because if I can give that same gift that you didn't get maybe till you were 44 or 54, actually you're not even 54, we won't say age. And I was able to get it at 34, then my goal should be to give that gift to my kids even younger. And that only happens by being able to work on my brokenness, which you have done at an earlier stage, and you've created the possibility for me to do so. And then also to be able to be comfortable with the idea that as great a parent as I am and I intend to be, I'm going to fuck shit up with my kids too. And they're going to be broken. But I'm going to do my best to let them know that it's okay to be broken, and also to be honest with them and let them know how daddy was and is broken, and give them that gift that you've given me, hopefully at an even earlier age. So not only thank you to me, thank you for Adrian and Sienna as well, because that for me meant a lot more than you recognize it did.
Franco, one of the things that I realize is that, you're an amazing father. Your kids are so blessed. They're definitely already the generation, the model that I said I was going to break. It was broken with you and Jeffrey and Natasha. But your kids will take it to the next level. And what makes you an incredible father and what makes me an incredible mother? Because the beauty of it is that if you accept yourself and you understand your intentions, if you understand that deep inside you were trying to be the best mother that you could be, you're trying to be the best father that you can be, that alone makes you an incredible father, an incredible mother.
Leader, husband, that's all you can ask of anybody, is be the best version of yourself that you can be. Yeah. And that's the biggest gift you can give yourself and everybody else around you. So speaking of being the best version of yourself, this is something that we both put a lot of emphasis on, and a lot of the drive right now, and it started with business, for me. And one of the things that one of the questions that I think, as I've been thinking about this process and interviewing people, that I think is something I want everybody to touch on that comes onto this podcast, is I realized when I decided to become an entrepreneur, and I'll ask you to share a little bit about what your entrepreneurial background is right now. But when I decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I had the confidence to become an entrepreneur because I had proven success. So I was also naive enough to go out there and give it a try and jump without really knowing what I was getting myself into. But I wasn't making as much money as I used to make. The money started to go out. The pressure started to build. My capacity needed to be higher, but I wasn't there. So I wasn't capable of being the person I needed to be, and was in a space, as most entrepreneurs probably experience, very few, I'm sure, is instant success, although that's the perception out there. I was exposed. And I like to say that, it's kind of like when the tide goes out, the bottom of the ocean is exposed, and all the cracks, all the imperfections, all, the rocks are now evident. when money is covering it, though, you don't see that. You know, it seems like everything's okay on the surface. So for me, entrepreneurship completely exposed me. And even though you've been doing a lot of work on yourself for many years, you recently, about 4 or 5 years ago, decided to become an entrepreneur. You had been an entrepreneur building a other business, very successful practice for 25 some odd years, but you took this jump. So I would like you to share with the listeners, what has the process of entrepreneurship like been for you? Explain your business. And then what weaknesses has this current process exposed for you that you've been working on over the last few years?
Yeah. So after being very comfortable at my job for 26 years, making very good money, pension, everything, I decided in 2015, after, I was sick in 2014, that was my next catalyst. I call them aceleradores in Spanish.
Accelerators.
So I've had quite a few accelerators when I look back in my life. And my illness, when I became sick, that was the catalyst for me to really revisit and rethink my purpose. What do I want to do? Like, what is the impact that I want to leave when I'm gone? Do I still want people to say, Maria worked at this prestigious practice with the affluent community, and she built this amazing business for the business, the doctors. And yet, I was in this turmoil because my family and many people that I know, remember, I'm not going to mention name, but there was a woman that was working out with us, and this person was undocumented, and this person something happened to her knee, and she couldn't continue to work out because she couldn't get surgery, and she had no insurance and not access to be able to fix her knee. And I'm looking at everybody that is struggling, including in my own family. And I decided that I understand healthcare to a level that not many people do. And I decided to jump into the most uncomfortable place there is, which is to be able to create a medical center where I was going to impact the uninsured community with a strong focus on the undocumented population. And I was going to figure out a way to provide healthcare and make it accessible, transparent, and dignified.
So you had a vision.
I had a vision. So I just jumped into the vision. I quit my job. I went in, this was decided probably, within a month or so. I'm leaving. And I was determined that I was going to leave. And I gave myself 3 months, and I ended up, it's a long story, so I'm going to make it short, joining my business partner, Gina Capelli,
which I introduced you to.
Which, by the way, yes. Franco, actually, everything happens for a reason. You were
selling advertising.
Exactly. And you told Gina that Mom is going to be leaving. And Gina reached out to me, and to make a long story short, we ended up joining forces together. And I said to Gina, she had built an amazing facility. So I talk about divine intervention. And I decided that, God was going to lead me in the way that he wanted me to go. So he opened all these doors, and Gina and I took on this venture of figuring a way to provide healthcare to the uninsured community. And we knew it was going to be extremely challenges. It was going to be extreme challenges.
So, new business, creating a totally different lane. So it's not just a new business. It was trying to create, something that hasn't been done before. And you take this jump. Now, it's not like you took this jump, from a place of you didn't know what you were doing. You've been in this space for 25 years, running medical practices. And you would think on paper, if anybody's going to take a jump, she should be the one taking a jump because it's what you know.
Yeah.
So having said that, you take this jump, and obviously, I've shared with you the Steve Harvey video. That was a big motivator, and it's something that my business partner and I talk about often, especially in the beginning. Your parachute doesn't open right away, and that's the misconception of most people. So tell me a little about the pain and the struggle of what building a business and a movement, what has it been like? The real, the ugliness, not to deter people from wanting to be an entrepreneur, but the real truth.
It has been the biggest challenge professionally for me, but ironically, and we'll talk about this because I'm going to share with you, the truth, the being raw. Because I've had a purpose, as tough as it's been, I have grown professionally and mentally and emotionally to another level. I mean, the growth from all of the challenges, one after the other, one after the other. Let me tell you, I mean, are we going to make payroll? That was the question of every 2 freaking weeks. We hated the 2 weeks every time. And we're running out of money. And will the bank give us money? And you go to the banks and everybody's turning you down because they might not believe, they don't believe in your story. You believe in it, you can feel it. And yes, like I knew healthcare. But what I forgot is that I came into a prestigious practice that had a very strong foundation. They had, even though I took him from 7 doctors to 50, those 7 doctors had an incredible reputation. And one of the biggest thing is money was not an issue. They were making a lot of money. We just ended up making more and more and more money. But I go to a place where it needs to be rebuilt completely. As a matter of fact, I think 2 people out of the are still with us out of all the people that were in the office. So it had to be structured completely, restructure. But the biggest challenge is that you're starting something fresh. So how do you start selling? I didn't have experience in marketing and sales. So that was a huge challenge. And without patience, we don't have a practice. So here you are struggling to have the incomes, restructuring this new business, and then you have there's not enough patience. So how do you go and market this business? So number one, I can tell you one thing. You have to be emotionally strong. If you are not emotionally strong, you better get ready because the parachute, I've been bruised, I've been beaten, I've been cut, but if you're not emotionally ready, it could wear you down. I mean,
so emotional strength and personal development and working on yourself is a common topic, and definitely something that I speak about often and some of the work that I've done. But I made this jump and I didn't know how emotionally weak I was. So for somebody listening to this that's either in a place where I'm thinking of opening up a business and you're saying you need to be emotionally strong, what are some of the tactical things that you would recommend that somebody does? Or if they're already like us and they've made that jump and now they're like, shit, well, I'm hearing this and I'm emotionally weak. What do you do to get emotionally strong?
You have to invest time in yourself. You have to start being curious as to why are you as weak as you are emotionally? That's the first question. And then you're going to have to start taking action, whether it is self-improvement books. Look at what you did. You went to the Warrior program. You figure out a way. You are the example of that, right? I mean, I happened to go into entrepreneurship at a stage of my life where I was emotionally extremely stable. But so I was blessed in that direction, right? But you actually went into entrepreneurship in a place where you were really
Not ready.
not ready. You were not emotionally stable. You were quite broken, as you talk about it openly. But you actually can talk even more about this, because what you've done with your brokenness and having the business, and now taking the business, and you're seeing the results that you're seeing. You're only seeing the results you're seeing because you've done so much work on yourself, and you know it, right? You said it has to be that I have to do work on myself, because if I don't fix this, nothing would be okay. Not my marriage, not my kids, not your business, nothing. So you're the expert at this.
Well, I don't know about expert. I have a lot of work.
I'm putting it on you.
but thank you. Yes, I've definitely done a lot of work. What I got from what you said was the first step is realizing how emotionally strong are you actually, and recognizing that just because you're emotionally weak doesn't mean that you can't succeed, and that if you are emotionally weak, you're not alone, and it's okay to be wherever you are.
Yeah.
But it's not okay to not do something about it, because eventually your business will swallow you whole. And that's a very different perspective than an employee who at 5, 6 o'clock, whenever you punch out for the day, your business doesn't, it ends at the door. When you're an entrepreneur, it consumes your life if you allow it, and it will affect every other aspect of the business. One of the things I've talked about before is that I thought I had a production problem. So the reason I went into Wake Up Warrior, and all the other things that I did, and all the books that I read, and the Grant Cardones, and studying, and et cetera, and the tens of thousands of dollars when I was broke that I invested in myself, something to the tune of $100,000. I mean, it's a big fat number, I had to first recognize that I didn't have the answers, and I wasn't okay with that, but I had to do something about it. And if you can't own and take extreme ownership for, and that's a great book, that I've read, but extreme ownership for where you're at, you're never going to be able to create anything different, because you have blind spots. And the only way you can work on something is if you actually first admit that, hey, I have something to work on. So,
Which a lot of people, by the way, unfortunately don't. We were talking about self-awareness. I mean, let's give some of our, our tools.
mhm.
So we share every morning. We're sharing, right? Every morning we're looking at motivational videos or motivational quotes, and we were just talking about awareness, self-awareness. That is so valuable, but somehow it is so difficult to really be self-aware. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned purpose. So at different stages of your life, you've had different purposes. And if you have a deep purpose, especially you need a deep purpose, a deep why. There's so many motivational people that talk about this. But that's the only thing that's really going to force you to look in the mirror, because the mirror can be very painful. And wherever the biggest pain is where the biggest opportunity is. But if you don't have a very deep burning fire to look and stay at looking at that mirror, you're going to turn away when it gets too painful or too hot. And for you, first it was me, when, I was a few months old.
Yeah.
Recently you have a mission, you have a passion, that's deeply rooted inside you. For me, it was, Sienna, started the process, and then Adrian furthered the process. It just really started first with business. I thought I was unhappy, but didn't really understand it. At the end of the day, the self-awareness process is what kept, at every step of the way, the more self-aware that I become, the deeper and the foundation I can go. And most people just see the rise, but they don't see that the roots have to go very, very deep to be able to grow very, very high. So self-awareness, I agree 100%, is one of the most important things, and that's really where the step starts. So we have probably about 2 more questions before we wrap up. You mentioned tactically, what are some of the things that you do to become emotionally stronger? What else can you share with the audience of things that you've done in the past that have been successful for you to develop that emotional strength?
The biggest one for me, the biggest, has been my gratitude journals. I actually got to, I didn't realize how much of gratitude journaling I had done until I'm getting ready for my book, where I took them out and I'm like, my God, they were like 7 years of gratitude journals.
Say that one more time.
7 years of gratitude journals. And it wasn't like I'm just writing, oh, I appreciate, I'm grateful for the sun, I'm grateful for the moon. It was, there were details of the gratitude that I found every day, on no matter how difficult my days were. So
wait, gratitude isn't easy?
Gratitude is not easy.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to check. You don't flip a switch. Okay, just check it in.
It doesn't. And thanks to you, I learned that is that case, right? Because it became so easy for me later on in life that I actually
almost took it for granted.
And became a little bit almost too full of myself, which is, your ego is a dangerous thing. And we have to check the ego quite often, and that's my new thing, is my ego. I want to check my ego as I go into this journey of sharing with people and being on social media, and hopefully, really, not hopefully, when I start impacting thousands of lives, you have to make sure the purpose of why you're doing it. And for me, I want to impact. I want to live my life, and I want to completely be used, completely, in every purpose that God has given me. I want to be able to attack. I want to be able to address. I want to be able to nurture and just leave it out there. So there is, there's so much beauty in that. Books, self-improvement books. There are so many of them. And the thing is, you're not just connecting. You need to read many different books, because you might not connect with certain books, but then you might find something. Oh, here it is. I'm always looking for the meat, always. And then being curious. At this stage of my life, I'm more curious as to how can I make you better? So even with my staff, I want to know, what am I doing that is preventing you from doing your job better? Feedback. I want feedback. I was telling somebody, I asked this question, would you take criticism from anybody? And most people say, I won't really take criticism from, this one or that one. I'm only taking criticism for the people that are closest to you. Guess what? I said, I take criticism from everyone, including my enemies, because we all have enemies. That's life. There are people that don't like you, and you have to embrace it and accept it. But I have had the biggest lessons from my enemies. I've become so good, especially in the business world. I'm curious. I am not listening to the attack. I am listening, how can I prepare for the attack better? Because they're giving you a gift. But when you are able to put the guard down and understand that you are who you are, that you're good, and that you have a purpose, and you find that peace, and there is a process. It's the daily process. Is the meditation. It is the exercise. For me, exercise have been life-saving. It's incredible how much it's my happy medicine. And as you know, I've worked out most of your life. You can remember seeing me worked out. Working out for me was part of that journey. It was part of the healing journey. Gratitude journals, reading self-improvement books. Now, I step it up now. So I now listen to Audible books, and I will listen to, if I like an Audible book, because sometimes it's hard to to listen to an audible book and get grasp as many of the concept that you're getting, I will listen to it twice. I will listen to it 3 times. And I'm always looking for learning. Like I become a better listener. But it is the process. So there's many, many tools out there to start to begin this process.
So anything that's worth having is not easy. And, that is, probably the biggest lesson to learn with entrepreneurship, with, wanting to be a great parent, with wanting to be a great person, to wanting to be fit. There's no pill. We're in a pill, instant gratification, society. And that's the biggest challenge that I experienced, because I got into business. I was pretty cocky, and I expected instant gratification also, and it exposed my emotional weakness, because that's just not the reality. That doesn't mean that it's immensely rewarding when you have a deep purpose like you have, but anything, whether it's gratitude or whether it's being successful in business, requires a lot of reps. That's the message I keep hearing from you is, 7 years of gratitudes, every day listening to audiobooks, continuing to, work out, that's a piece, but it's a consistent process. So
Yeah,
anything you've been most successful at, you've had to have been consistent.
totally.
And, the example, as I've said, you've set an amazing example for myself, my siblings, and I've learned most recently more from your imperfections than your what I thought was perfection. So that vulnerability of sharing also applies to business, and being able to be comfortable enough to share with your staff, with the world, from a vulnerable place. That's something I've struggled with, and we've talked about a lot. So my last question that I want to ask is, as an entrepreneur, when you're in this place of darkness or fear or doubts or insecurities, what have you done well, and what have you not done so well? Like, what have you learned through this process? Because we've talked about some times where you felt alone, you haven't chosen to lean into, faith, you've leaned into fear, and so what has that been like for you, this whole idea of fear and faith and being vulnerable and sharing in those weaker moments? Because anybody can share when shit's good.
Of course, yeah. One of the things that I realized with this, new business was that I thought I had the formula to everything. Like you said, you almost in a way a little bit too full of yourself, and you look at this broken structure, and you're sort of set in your ways. So I was at Scarsdale for 26 years. And somehow I thought the tools that I learned at Scarsdale, I could apply exactly the same way to the tools that I had in the new business. That was totally a different foundation, which was broken. And I got shaken up in what I understood in one of my weaknesses that was a strength as Scarsdale was that I just did things fast. I was an action woman. It was I'm gonna take action. That's it. I'm gonna get this done. And I made mistakes in the new business because of that. And I was acting too quick and not understanding that, not really taking a step back to understand the bigger picture in how, like a chess game, you move this here and it's going to affect the next move. And that was definitely, that kicked my ass so many times until I would say for the first 2 to 3 years, it really, and I feel now, and we've just gotten beaten up again. And that's the other thing, that you feel, you get to a place and you're like, okay, this is it. I mean, how are we going to survive this one? I don't even know how we're going to survive. You get so good at it that now when you get hit,
You can take a punch.
you can take a punch. It's like almost you're training for boxing. It is similar to that. You're going to get up. And the irony is that I realize that we actually have gotten so good at it that we get up a lot quicker. and we build a lot faster, and we reflect, reset, and redirect a lot faster.
That's awesome. Great feedback, and I appreciate the time. This was an awesome experience. Is there any last comments that you want to share with the audience, with myself, or that you just want to reflect on?
Yeah. My favorite words are reflect and reset, and that is why we have our show that is called Reflect and Reset with Maria and Gina, or Reflexiones con Maria. My biggest advice to any of our followers is that you need to reflect on a daily basis. You cannot get too secure with yourself. It's you can get complacent in a way. So reflection, it is key. If you're not reflecting, I reflect on the day. I reflect in the morning. I reflect on how the intentions that I'm creating. Reflecting and resetting is key. Do not get don't get to a space where you're just comfortable, because it's dangerous.
Powerful words, and obviously very resonates very much with the message of the Honest Liar podcast. Because as I always say, it's around finding the inner liar within all of us and leveraging that truth to create expansion across all areas of your life. So thank you so much for sharing your truth and your experience and this awesome coffee date.
That is awesome. It is an honor for me, my son. I am one of the most powerful person, but it's not because of who I am or what I've done. It is because of I'm sitting in front of you and seeing the results of my motherhood, creating someone as special